Welcome to Module 7 of the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Training Programme, funded by Food and Drink Wales. This module focuses on how climate change impacts your people, your staff and the service providers who help keep your operations running smoothly. Each module is supported by a workbook full of practical templates, resources and checklists that you can tailor to your business. In this session, we'll explore how climate change may affect staff and service providers and the practical steps to take to protect and support your team. Take a moment to think back to the pandemic. How did prolonged staff absences affect your ability to keep production running? What parallels can you see with potential climate-related disruptions such as floods, storms, or extreme heat? In this module, we will explore the people impacts of climate change, introduce the action-centered leadership model for managing change, review employer duties and responsibilities, identify vulnerable staff groups, suggest climate adaptation actions, and consider climate impacts on key service providers. Which of these areas do you think poses the biggest risk to your business right now? Staff well-being, leadership, or the reliability of your key service providers? Your staff are your most valuable asset. Without them, production halts and business continuity is at risk. And remember, your service providers are part of that extended team. Their climate risks can quickly become your business risks. Who are your most critical people? Which roles or service providers would cause major disruption if they couldn't operate for a week? Implementing climate-related changes require effective leadership. The action-centered leadership model helps by balancing three core needs. Task, that is what needs to be achieved. Team, how do we work together to make it happen? And the individual, how do we motivate and support each person concerned? Starting with what change you need to implement, the task needs to be clearly defined with clear objectives and allocation of resources. How will the task be controlled? Is there a set budget? Are you looking for a quality standard to be achieved? And how will you review performance against the plan? You also need to consider the needs of the group or the team in the context of that change. Members of the group need to be able to work together as a team and know what standards they are working to. Perhaps they will need some training to underpin the change that is being required of them. And of course, this change needs to be supported by clear communications highlighting why the change is necessary. The needs of the individual are equally as important. Does the change help address individual problems, and will there be recognition of individual objectives and requirements? As with the group needs, do you need to put some training and development in place to support your required change? Thinking through your change program in the context of the task, the group, and the individual may help you to identify potential obstacles to implementing the desired change and thus give you time to find ways to address and remove those obstacles. From Module 1, we learned that Wales has seen temperatures increasing over recent decades, and heat waves are becoming more frequent, longer, and intense. As a food or drink business, you may be concerned about this from a number of different perspectives, including impacts on staff health and welfare, risks to productivity, and impacts on product performance and quality. This example shows how a food or drink business can adapt to more frequent and intense heat waves by considering the needs of the task, the group, and the individual. Some of the adaptations which could be considered are adjusting shift times to work in cooler periods, improving ventilation or air circulation, product or recipe reformulation, providing more frequent hydration breaks, introducing heat stress awareness training, and setting a clear trigger point for your heat wave response plan. Who will monitor weather forecasts and inform the team that the heat wave response will come into force? Consider what small, low-cost changes you could make now to help staff stay comfortable and safe during heat waves. When thinking about how your staff may be impacted by climate change, there are two main areas to consider. The first is the well-being and health of your team. As we saw in the previous slide, there can be well-being impacts on all staff, and these can be exacerbated for staff with medical conditions or who are at different life stages. And secondly, climate shock events might impact directly on the availability of your staff members to work for you. Can they get to work after a bad storm and if main transport routes have been affected? Take a moment to consider how resilient your business is if key staff can't physically get to your site for several days. This infographic from Public Health Wales highlights how climate change affects people's health, from respiratory problems to mental health challenges. There is a lot to read on this slide, and the infographic is available in the Module 7 workbook if you would like to look at this in more detail. One particular area of concern is air quality. Heat waves and wildfires contribute to poorer air quality, which can be risky for anyone suffering from respiratory conditions such as asthma. And of course, mental health and well-being. Imagine being flooded out of your home and still trying to keep day-to-day life on track, get the children to school, look after or care for older relatives, get to work. You can imagine that these pressures might affect your staff's ability to be productive. Which of these impacts could be most relevant to the day-to-day roles of your team members? And how could you support them in a changing climate or after a climate shock event? As we covered in Module 6, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 places a legal duty on all businesses with 5 or more employees to protect health and safety. All health and safety policies should be communicated to staff, contractors, and visitors to your site. Ask yourself, are your health and safety policies keeping up with our changing climate? Do they need to be amended to address particular hazards? One adaptation you could make is to update your health and safety policies with a climate-conscious view. Just last year, the British Safety Council urged employers to conduct climate risk impact analyses on their businesses to consider what those impacts might be. The organisation specifically referenced extreme weather, increased biological risks, and the increased risk of accidents. As we have already explored, heat waves are becoming more common. Although no minimum or maximum temperatures have been defined by the Health and Safety at Work Act, there are some minimum recommended temperatures for working indoors. And heat has been classed as a hazard, and as all workers are entitled to an environment where risks to their health and safety are properly controlled, heat risks should be addressed. The Health and Safety Executive has published a useful heat stress checklist that you could adapt to your business. You may have staff members who have increased vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. The Health and Safety Executive has not defined a vulnerable person, but has identified vulnerabilities in different contexts. For example, pregnant workers, new mothers, migrant workers, individuals with disabilities or long-term health conditions, older workers, younger workers, or those who are new to their jobs. However, if you don't have staff who are part of these vulnerable groups, there are some activities you might want to review to ensure your policies and training take account of climate change impacts. For example, if you have staff who drive on behalf of your business, you might need to review your driving whilst on company business policy to ensure consideration is given to extreme weather conditions. On the next slide, we have shared a climate-conscious safe driving checklist which could be provided to staff to support their well-being. You may also have staff who regularly work outside and are subject to extreme weather conditions, or colleagues who work in inside areas with ovens or in chilled or frozen storage areas. You may wish to identify measures to ensure their well-being during adverse climate conditions. As we have alluded to, staff may be vulnerable if they suffer from certain medical conditions, such as asthma, diabetes, heart conditions, or high blood pressure, or they may have disabilities, or they may be at different life stages, such as pregnancy or menopause. These individuals may benefit from specific support measures to maintain well-being during climate events. Do you know which of your team members might need additional support to cope with climate change or shock events? The Health and Safety at Work Act requires employers to ensure the safety of employees when they are driving for work. It is therefore essential to assess and minimize risks for anyone driving on behalf of the business. Organisations such as Traffic Wales, the Met Office, the RAC, AA and the Institute of Advanced Motoring offer practical advice for driving in severe weather. Here's an example of a climate-conscious safe driving checklist. There are more details provided in the Module 7 workbook that you might want to share with staff or adapt as necessary. Other staff who may be more significantly impacted by climate events include staff with caring responsibilities. For children, someone disabled, or elderly relatives, they may need to take extra time to ensure that those in their care are safe and being looked after if a climate shock event occurs. Schools may close or home care services be unable to reach older clients, meaning your staff need to step in. You should already be aware if a staff member needs a personalised evacuation plan should a climate event occur. One of your contingencies might be to identify which roles can be carried out by individuals working remotely away from your site. We'll now explore 3 practical actions you can take to strengthen your climate resilience strategy as it relates to people. One action that you can implement is to establish and test your internal communications plan to give you the opportunity to check that you have everything you need and the processes in place should you need to activate it for real. By taking control of your internal communications, you can make sure that common messages are shared and avoid people speculating about the impact of the climate event on your business. This helps to ensure that rumours aren't spread that may affect your ability to bounce back from a climate shock event. Think about who you need from your team to agree the emergency plan and who will prepare the statements. Have you got up-to-date contact numbers and information for everyone named in the comms plan? Who will be responsible for briefing departmental heads and how will the staff communications be cascaded? Who will contact customers and other key stakeholders to manage expectations and provide reassurance? The Communications Cascade Plan is a key part of your business continuity plan, which we covered in Module 6, and we look at customer communications in more detail in Module 8. So, have you tested your emergency communications plan? If not, schedule a test, as this will help highlight weaknesses in the plan before a climate event or other emergency happens and you have to implement it for real. Making sure that your staff contact details are up to date is an obvious action, but one that is often overlooked in the day-to-day running of the business. Staff emergency contact details will be a key component of the contacts list that you will be creating as part of your climate-conscious business approach. If access to your premises is still physically possible after a climate shock event, and it is safe to do so, certain staff may be essential to taking action to protect critical assets, shut off utilities, secure hazardous substances, and assess damage for insurance claims. The Module 6 workbook has templates to help identify those key staff members and ensure you have their details accessible even if site access is disrupted. On this slide, we've listed a few types of roles that might be critical in the immediate aftermath of a climate shock event. For businesses with smaller teams, you may need to consider who would attend to each of these aspects of the emergency. So have a think about who would be your most critical team members in those first 24 hours after a major incident. The last of our 3 key staff-related actions is to develop a climate-conscious culture in your business. You could share the opportunity to participate in this climate adaptation training so that more of your team members are aware of the various types of climate-related events that could occur and the implications of their interconnected impacts for your business. Everyone, from directors to line operatives, plays a role in recognizing climate risks, spotting opportunities, and contributing ideas for adaptation. This might be something as substantial and strategic as factoring climate risk when you decide where you locate your new site or how you design a building extension, to considering supply chain risk when you choose new machinery or devise the recipes for your next product range, or how to acknowledge climate impacts on your staff and promote their well-being. How you consider climate risk in your strategic sales growth plan or target products to climate-conscious consumers. A culture does not emerge from one individual or even one team. It needs to be fostered by everyone and at every level in the business. Training is a key component in bringing the whole team with you on this journey, from educating the business's directors to fostering climate thinking in every other member of the workforce. The Module 7 workbook suggests some content ideas for your training. The other key people-related aspect to consider are your service providers. You may rely on a range of services from external providers who offer important skills and experience to your business. It is worth turning a climate-conscious lens on them too. This slide offers some examples of service providers who typically support food or drink businesses. The services range from IT to pest control, cleaning and hygiene services, to laboratory testing, recycling and waste management, to logistics services. What are their climate risks, and how would your business be impacted if they suffered a climate-related incident? A mitigation you could implement is to discuss with them what contingency plans they have in place regarding climate issues. Do they have a business continuity plan? Ask them to share it with you so that you can be assured that they won't let you down in an emergency. You could update your contracts or service level agreements with them to put the onus on them to provide you with their continuity plans, or you could build in periodic reviews of those plans as a condition of contract renewals. And if you aren't convinced that they are climate resilient, perhaps you should consider having contingency plans of your own in place, perhaps alternative suppliers. So which of your service providers are most critical to your operations, and do you know how climate ready they are? As we're coming to the end of this module, let's review what we've covered. We've looked at how climate change impacts staff and service providers. We introduced the action-centered leadership model as a way to manage and implement change. We reminded ourselves of the legal duties of employers with regards to health and safety, and we identified why some staff might be vulnerable to climate change impacts and suggested some actions to support them. We've also looked at the key service providers who may need to have a climate conscious lens applied to them to help your business be climate resilient. Here are a few ideas for next steps and actions that you can take away from this module. Who will be responsible for assessing vulnerability of your staff members to climate change and extreme weather events? How can you protect staff health and well-being? Who are your most critical service providers, and are they climate resilient? And can you collaborate with them to improve both their and your resilience? Who else in your team should receive this climate adaptation training to help embed your climate conscious culture and approach? So what's one action that you could take this month to make your team more climate ready? Coming next is our final module, which is Module 8. In this module, we will look at customers and consumers and highlight some of the opportunities that a climate-conscious approach might help you to identify for your food or drink business. Thank you for joining us for Module 7. Don't forget, the workbook that supports this module includes templates, tools, and further resources to help you apply the learning directly to your business. Why not share this training with colleagues and build a climate-conscious culture together?